Working. Good afternoon. It's Monday. Dr. Craig here. I'm all scrubbed up in my doctor pajamas. Just getting out of the office now. So I want to add a layer, something that you can do every single day throughout the day. It's going to be a layer to the breathing exercise we've been doing. Okay, so the breathing exercise we've been doing in Donnie Epstein's work is called somato-respiratory, so body breath integration. So basically just integrating the breath and the body. Why do we care about that? Because those of us who have had experiences in the past with our empathic system becoming overwhelmed, our initial defensive response is to lock down the body, and for our spirit self, our alive self in there, is to leave the body or to inhabit the body as little as possible because it's not a safe place. It gets overwhelmed. So those of us who haven't been overwhelmed, we still have a daily practice. A daily practice, unless you are sitting in an enlightened moment right now in your whole self. Hey, Misty. Unless you're sitting in an alive, enlightened moment right now, you're up against it. You're up against your edge. Your job to actually push, you've got closure patterns in place. Unless they're completely dissolved and you are one with everything happening in the universe, then you're not completely dissolved, and you have work to do, something to do on the inside, a combination of feeling and doing, to dissolve the dominant closure patterns in your system so that you can then bring yourself more to the table. And the first priority there is to bring yourself more into the body. Okay? So now we've already learned that the breathing exercise, we're breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth in this position 1 here, which is right above the heart and below the collarbones, with the fingers all aimed the same way, not with the thumb aimed up, because that shoots some energy up and some energy over. I'm going to have all the energy in the same way. A couple breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth here, and then right at the sternum, there's 2 more breaths, and then right at the belly button. That's 2 more breaths there. And remember, those are the 3 main branches of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is your instant access to your relaxed state. That's the nerve that will switch you out of that fight or flight state. And what is that? The fight or flight state is running up and down through your nervous system, causing, generating, and holding on to those closure patterns of defense. Those are the ones that are keeping you from experiencing the bliss of this world. So what we want to do is be able, unless we're enlightened in the moment, we recognize there's closure patterns in place. We can't find them, we can't see them because they're sneaky. They're sneaky like that. I'm turning sneaky like this. Okay, so closure patterns in place, and how the heck do you find them if they are being held in place, locked in place by the nervous system, by the spinal cord? And I'm going to pause there, side here. Can you understand what I'm saying? I know I'm driving and there's weird, spotty stuff. Is this making sense while I'm driving and being live? Maybe just somebody throw me a thumbs up, a yes, or a thumbs down, no, and if it's a no, I can hop back on in 20 minutes when I stop. But oftentimes while I'm driving, I'm by myself, I'm in a cocoon. It doesn't take a lot of mental energy. Thanks, Misty. And so this is some of the time that I get my best thinking done clearly, because that's where most of my videos are from. Okay, so then we're going through our process, right? And we're going to add a layer to this process, but I'm catching those of us who haven't heard me talk about it. I'm catching us up to speed. So breathing into position 1, up above the heart, position 2, which is the second branch of the vagus nerve, right below the heart where the diaphragm is, right where the fleshy spot of the tummy meets the bony spot of the sternum, and that position 3 is the belly button. And we're going to check in with each of those spots individually. And when we're breathing into those spots, we only want to let breath come under our hands. We don't want to let breath seep into either of the other two spaces. All right, so that's a critical point of view. I'm saying critical point of view to bookmark this place. If you didn't hear what I said, rewind it the last 15 seconds, play it again. Because right now we are dialoguing from moment to moment with part of the subconscious brain. We're also dialoguing with our inner knowing undulation, and she doesn't speak with words. She speaks with silent and motion patterns, and we need to learn to speak her language through the body. One of the ways that she's going to show you that she doesn't feel safe under your hand, one of the ways she might show you that you feel a little bit nauseous, or that your brain is acting up and being distracted. Like you just recognized the last 3 times I tried to breathe into here, I was thinking about something else, or I got self-critical, or the breath keeps wanting to pop down into my belly button or up into position 1, whichever the other 2 positions are. If I'm trying to breathe into my belly button, I may notice, wow, the breath just keeps going into my chest. That's your inner knowing telling you she doesn't like that spot. She doesn't feel safe in that spot. And she's going to tell you in her own way, which is going to be, remember what she does is she runs the background tribal neurology, which doesn't speak foreground information. Remember, foreground information, foreground neurology pays attention and uses words, uses clear actions to navigate you in space. It uses the focal part of the nervous system, the clarity, the decisive, like this is where we are. The tribal neurology works in the background in the big patterns. So that's going to be her clearly saying, we're not safe here, when she moves breath up into the 2 areas that you don't want breath to move. Okay? So this is us learning how she's communicating with us. And we need to learn every day. We need to learn her language, like any other language relationship establishment. So, now, what are we doing? I'm just also watching the tribal neurology driving people's cars here around me. What we're going to add is, I was talking with one of the clients today, the one-on-one coaching clients, whose clear recognition after going out to an event this weekend was, it was completely different, she says. Completely different because I was in my body watching all of the people and experiencing everything. As opposed to her whole life before that, her normal was not being in the body. It was being up here and watching around, which becomes our normal. We tell ourselves, we recognize that we're different, that we're experiencing things differently, and we experience things from up here, which is a safe place for the spirit to watch events when it's not safe to experience them from the body. And so now what we're actually generating with these really subtle movements, this is how we directly correspond with the inner knowing. And when we directly correspond with the inner knowing, she calls our spirit now into the body. She calls us now into the body, and so we wake up in the body now. Enlightenment happens here. It happens immediately. And the trick then is, how do we make it last? Because we come into the body, and if we look around and we recognize too many closure patterns, there's too much danger around, we pop right back out. Right? And that's why we have 3 stages. We have 3 priorities for this work. The first one is to be able to dissolve the closure pattern, switch us out of fight or flight. And as we do that, that inner knowing undulation calls us in immediately. That's when number 2 comes into place. We need to have a way where the nervous system can coordinate the patterns of relaxation, of parasympathetic, So the body actually builds a nest for the spirit to come into, for us to come into, for us to come home, for us to be okay and safe and be present in the body with whatever intensity is happening. So we're seeing the difference, and the number 3 is to understand why we're doing it, and that's what happens, that there's a process. Some days it's going to be easier than others. But this can be no small difference coming at life from inside the body, and sometimes it can feel very vulnerable, that we're just behind our eyes instead of you got to go behind our eyes and then 50 feet up. Like, that's a much safer position to be in for those of us who've had a lot of trauma in our lives. That's a safe place for us to be. So part of what we're doing is we're deciding now it's not a traumatic land to be living in, this earth plane. So now we're realizing we have to take action. In addition to just therapy, or addition to kind of understanding and talking our way through it, which is critical. I'm a way pro fan of therapy. Do it myself. Did it today. I love having a good therapist on my team. But we recognize that there is a physical and neurophysiologic corresponding pattern that has to be laid down, and involves our taking responsibility for our own coming home. So that's position 1 and 2 and 3. Those are the 3 branches of the parasympathetic. Checking in with each, watching to see, can we actually get breath into each? And if we can't, that's okay, because that's where we are that day. And so then we breathe into the other 2 places. Hi, all 5 people there. All I can see on my phone here is that we got 5. And I love our community here that we're doing this. Notice, so this is me recognizing that's my inner knowing that says I need to take all of this momentum, this mental momentum that I've been building in this last couple of minutes, and I'm pausing now, rhythmic, and I'm listening to her rhythm to run all of these perceptions, these plates that I'm spinning up here. And I have to completely, this is kind of an internally risky thing, because I'm doing this live, and it's risky even when you're doing it yourself, but then I'm talking you through what's happening for me right now. Because this is what happens when your primary relationship is not those out here that you serve. And it's not here either. Your primary relationship is that internal knowing, undulation, that spinal cord undulation, and that is, and why I call it a her, because it's the wild animal. It's that wild human animal. And I'm listening to her, and she's telling me in the background, okay, pause, Walker, while I just ingest. And then, because she's saying I'm out, and I'm talking to Starling. So now I'm finding where's the wisdom, where I've given enough information, where do I want to go now? Okay, she's basically saying, all right, come back to the layer that you want to add in to the breathing exercise. Okay? So we've done the breathing here, here, and here. We're recognizing if breath comes in here, and we're recognizing anywhere that the breath isn't coming, we're not going to stay there, because part of us doesn't feel safe there. There's a closure pattern there. And just like an eggshell, you don't want to crack it from the outside. We want the closure patterns to dissolve from the inside. So what we're not going to do is to do any kind of forcing of the breath or forcing of the hands or efforting at all. There's a closure pattern there, which means there may be fear there or guarding there. That's fine. We're going to let internal knowing, the deep internal knowing, deal with her. So we're going to go to the 2 spots that didn't feel quite as bad. We're going to go to the one that felt actually the most connected. We're going to breathe twice into that spot. And then when our hands are completely sponged, completely fully sponged with that connection sensation, we're going to bring that one time up to the area that didn't feel as safe or felt a little bit disconnected. Just one time, and then back to the other spot 2 times. Now here's the addition. because of how powerful this exercise can be and how immediately present you can feel in the body while you're breathing here, when you're being honest with yourself. And that's the risk here, is that we're being honest, and as soon as we're honest, we wake up to there's no danger, and as soon as there's no danger, we immediately wake up in that part, and it can be very dramatic. It can be wake up in that part of the body, and we're immediately peering out at the world, not from up here, but from in the body, and it can be dramatic, and it can be vulnerable. So what the part that I want to layer in is, as you breathe into this spot, and you're just using your natural breath, as natural as possible. As soon as you breathe in, you notice that connection, and that you're breathing into that spot, you're going to feel out into the world, looking out into the world from that spot, assess everything from there, and then come back in. You don't have to do it dramatically with your hands like I just did, okay? Because all it is an asking. It's a question. It's a curiosity. So I'll do it in a place that you can see me here. Great, so I'm finding breath here. And now with that breath, I'm looking around. And then I come back in and I do more breath. Why is it so powerful? If you can stay with yourself, if you can stay, and it's okay if you don't, it's okay if you're getting distracted with the thoughts. But if you can stay with the breath and the experience as you come in, and then what that does is it softens those closure patterns. It softens those patterns of defense. And what that also does is it softens the filters, the mental filters, everything that's looking and trying to sort for defensive things that we need to defend against, sorting for danger. It softens those. And so part of us feels like we've just completely laid down all of our armor and our shields, and we're putting our shields down and we're looking out. That's the part that can feel so vulnerable and exposing. And so what we're doing is putting our toe in the water. We're dosing ourselves a little bit with, here's what reality looks like when I'm completely, freely, without filter, looking out into the world. That's you getting in touch with your baby self, with your little infant self. Okay? And that's the part of number 2, the stage 2, where you actually, once you've learned how to soften the defenses, bring the fight or flight down, switch over to parasympathetic, then there needs to be a practice. And once you've done this a couple of times, you get a little bit hooked on it. It's still scary, it's still edgy, but it's almost like the stage fright thing. If you talk to any seasoned actor, there's always, especially when they're working with a role that they're excited about, and what makes a role that they're excited about. It's one that they're relying on their inner knowing, which is that inner magic, to actually produce some of the authenticity with the role that they're playing, which means they have to completely come out and not quite know what's going to happen. And that's inviting and leaning back into, the best word I can come up with is faith. Okay? Is the faith, and this is yeah, Margot. This is the faith that, my assumption that is the truth behind what can seem like spiritual dogma. Just have faith, just have faith, just have faith. Well, there's a truth behind why that word has stuck around. And this is the action. This is the action that allows you to wake up to the truth behind the person that came up with that religion in the first place. That realized, okay, I have to come out and be vulnerable and recognize I'm actually holding hands with this inner knowing. There's a bunch of different names, depending on the religious point of view that you're looking at, that names for this inner knowing. All right? And so you can kind of look around and recognize there's some parallel with what I'm talking about. But in kind of today's age, it's really fun to kind of talk about the science of it. This is why we're going to breathe here. This is why we're going to breathe here. This is why we're going to breathe here. And this is the mechanics of getting to a fantastic and miraculous life. Don't sit back and go, I need to have faith. I need to have faith. What am I going to have faith in? Right? You're going to practice breathing into here, recognizing that part of your body's fearful, but this is the way there's closure patterns, right? That's just normal. So you're going to breathe it. You're going to recognize, well, this is how I find where the closure patterns are, right? And that could be closure patterns. Well, I could call that the devil. I could call that's the underlying darkness that undermines all the bad things that have happened. That's what the narcissists prey on. Yeah, all that, but I don't care about all that because my primary relationship is here. And as I tend to my primary relationship here, here, and here, and I'm breathing into the one that has the most access to my deep inner knowing, that's the golden. What did Dorothy walk? The yellow brick road, not the golden road, the yellow brick road, right? So that's the yellow brick road. And this one isn't, or other way around, or this is not and this one is. And so this is the yellow brick road for that day, and that's why you're practicing multiple times a day. Which is my way in? That's your yellow brick road in, and then you get to the end, and the wizard is what? Something big and scary? No, when you actually open up the curtain and you peer out, and that's why today's layering is so critical. You find that deep access to peace and truth. And what's truth? It just all truth is just you feel the most at home in your body. Not just, but merely. If you feel at home in your body, that's all you're listening for. And then from there, you look out into the world. And when you look out into the world, when the filters are up, if you want to look out into the world and see the filters up and all the danger, that's going to be breathing into the part that's not getting air. That's going to be the part that if you walk into wherever the wizard lived in the Dorothy Wizard of Oz, wherever he was, if you go in there and try to breathe into your place of closure, that's going to see the big wizard up there and freak out. But if you breathe into the part that actually is connected, and then you look out into the world and you breathe into the part that's connected, and you bring it up into the area that's a little bit disconnected, and you come back to the part that's connected, and you start to expand that inner knowing on yourself, what happens? You're able to stay attending to what's really happening in the world, and all of a sudden, you look over, and there's some little bald guy pulling levers in the background behind a screen, and the whole charade starts to come down. All the people that used to be scary and trauma-inducing, you see behind their scary mask, and you realize that you can feel right into their fear, and you can feel and you can feel actually into their inner knowing, and that's what they're looking for also. And you can feel into that, and you don't have to address it head on. You don't even have to go over there and address it, but you get to see behind the curtain in many of the people around you. And just finding your yellow brick road, that's what turns your empathic capacity from a wound, which is what sees all the darkness and wizardry when you're trying to look through a traumatically closed body. When you're seeing from the area that's opening, the part of your parasympathetic, part of your vagus nerve that shows you, okay, we're not so bad here today, and you know how to affect that without any drugs, without any medication, without any of the other dramatic things, that you can make a dramatic change with a really systematic, subtle, and clear strategy with yourself. I don't even know where I was going with that sentence, but I think you probably all followed me where I was going, that you can actually continue to develop the neurology and expand that in your body so that, that's right, the empathic nervous system as a wound, if it ever has been a wound for you, or overwhelming. Now you know why it's been overwhelming. Because you've had it, it's been turned on, but you've been, as Susan just brilliantly said today, it's been a misunderstanding. That's the most brilliant thing I heard today. She says, this has just been a misunderstanding. When you live decades of your life trying to see things through a protected shell, all the filters skew everything as a potential danger. which is a misunderstanding. And if you can actually live into your power from the part of you that, and you know how to turn on and switch yourself more easily and more powerfully and more sustainably into the parasympathetic state, and then practice looking out from that. And still for me, it gets me a little bit edgy because you have to lean into being open and vulnerable. I think there's Brene Brown says a little bit of something like that, the power of vulnerability. And that always is going to require you finding a way to lean into seeing things clearly, which means as vulnerable as you can be, and having faith in this inner knowing that she's going to guide you. And so that's why I'm such a fan of daily establishing and growing the relationship between you and the part of your neurology, your physiology, which is, there's science, but there's also that divine intelligence there that is what this is. That doesn't speak English, that doesn't speak our language, and she's waiting for us to learn how to actually communicate with her and hear subtly in the background where you're being called. So that's my lesson for the day. Thank you all for joining. Yes, and those of you that want to have a free one-on-one phone conversation with me where we can really dive into what's going on specifically with you, if you really want to get a handle on this stuff, this is the stuff that gets me most excited, obviously. And really seeing from the outside where are people's closure patterns, so we can help really get pedal to the metal on reducing pain. And if you've got other kind of physical situations going on, disease patterns, whatever, I can't act as a doctor, but I can have philosophical conversations with you around things that you could do that might produce significant results in those, and then we can call in whatever other providers we may need to help with that. So I offer up to an hour, no charge, whatever it takes for us to really come up with a solid plan where you feel pretty damn excited about getting on and really getting on with your path of healing. And I offer that, like I said, for no charge. And those of you that are interested in my really diving into this stuff deeply, where you've got me helping you coordinate the fast track out of these closure patterns that you may have been practicing, much of your whole life, especially with various traumas and things. Or if you're already high functioning and you want to take your relationship or your work or your personal development, not just to the next level, because that's just another stopping point, but you want to actually develop a sustainable growth path and strategy, then we can talk about that too, because that's something that's a much smaller group of folks, and I offer those positions really to people that I know that I can help, and they're called to do it. So again, thanks for hanging out, everybody. If you want to send me a message, great. I'll be on this thing watching for them, and I've been having a lot of great calls lately with folks really passionate about getting some change in their lives, so I'm just loving how this group is turning out. All right, y'all, have a great Monday night in the rain. Okay, talk to you. I'm going to do tomorrow, and thanks for showing up in the live. Talk to you soon.